She's toasty, bud.
You gotta be smarter than the zipper, my bro. That's what I said to my bag.
No notes for you today if you can't unzip your backpack.
No notes for you.
Yikes.
What's up, man?
I'm good. Feeling healthy.
Were you not feeling healthy?
I'm just feeling extra healthy today.
Oh, I was gonna say, I see you pretty regularly. I didn't know that there was an illness in the mix.
There wasn't. Just feeling good today.
What about your general person is making you feel extra healthy?
I got a massage this afternoon.
Ooh,
worked out some things.
That'll do it.
Was
it a crystal stone massage of some?
No. They'd probably be open to it though if I brought some.
Were you in a weird salt cave basement?
No, just a room.
Okay. Just checking.
With a table and a person.
That sounds relatively pedestrian.
Pretty standard stuff.
But also thoroughly enjoyable.
Yeah, it was great. It was great. Been having some issues. Not having any issues anymore.
I think I should probably do that.
I looked at my calendar today where I keep track of my running schedule. I ran 50 miles this month.
Damn, that's a long way to run. That wasn't gonna fit.
That boy's long.
I didn't try to squeeze it in. Congratulations, motherfucky.
Thanks, dude.
You're well on your way to dunking a marathon into the running basket.
Lost 12 pounds in the process, which feels healthy.
It's lit, fam.
Just gonna send it.
Still gonna send it.
Been sending it this month. Feeling good.
That's tight, dude. That's tight. I've been, man, look at us. We're on our grown man, dad dog's ghost blog health shit, bro.
You know what it is? Getting to that age where if I don't do stuff, I kind of feel shitty.
Yeah. And also it goes the other way, quick. If you choose to do nothing, it's not like a neutral ground where you just maintain. It just starts to get worse. So if you don't do something, real talk. And if it's another day, another beer, it's going to be another LB in 14 days.
Yeah.
Till it's too many. And y'all, I got to be honest. I know that linear time is a thing that often scares me, but
it's not real. It's okay. You don't have to worry about that.
But, linear time in the sense that, holy shit, is it almost fall? Where did the year go?
Hot take.
Where did the year go?
Tell me more about this.
It's not a hot take. It's a very cliched and adult thing to be like, boy, time sure is moving fast. But I do feel like we just started doing our January episodes 3 weeks ago.
It's a pretty nice day out there today.
Don't you think? Don't you know?
See that new episode of the TV show?
Hey, if you liked it, you should check out my ghost blog. I tell stories about the ghosts I run into on my old ghost blog.
Boop. Here.
Word, man. Hi, everybody. It's the What If Podcast. That's
Hello.
Spencer. I'm Ryan.
Hello.
And
I answered for both of us, just for those of you that get confused about whose voice
you
is
did
who.
say hello and hello. That's not good for anyone. I'm Ryan. This voice is Ryan.
This voice is Spencer. You want to hear some voicemails?
Yeah, let's kick it off with some listener contributions.
It looks like we're starting with one maybe roasting me based on Google's description.
That's my favorite kind of voicemail.
Transcription.
Hey, guys, this is Bandit from Wisconsin. I forgot if I called in before, but...
Bandit? Was
Bandit
that
from
the name?
Wisconsin.
Got
Yeah,
it.
I think Bandit did call in because I remember thinking, it's a pretty fucking sweet name.
I think I have, and I forgot what on, but if this is the same thing, I'm sorry. But basically, I'm calling to complain about Spencer's taste in general. Dude, what? Maybe I'm just an idiot, but
Got him!
I really, really like the Red Hot Chili Peppers like this.
No, you're just an idiot. It's okay.
No, the chili peppers are great, and Spencer has trash taste. Carry on.
Great to me, and I actually like the what the fuck was it? Cloverfield Paradox. It was kind of trippy. If I'm thinking of the wrong
Cloverfield
movie,
Paradox.
Mm-hmm.
What was it? You know what? I think I forgot the basic plot of that movie. But when I hear the name,
So here's the thing. If you leave out the plot, it's okay.
I love the concept of hey, I really like that movie. I don't really remember what it was about, but I like that movie.
If you just don't really think about it, it's pretty solid.
I fucking think that it was okay. And maybe I'm taking too long to speak and my voicemail has been cut off. I don't know. But anyway, bye. love the show. You're doing great stuff. I'm going to buy some merch because I just bought Time Set Candle, which is another great podcast. Am I allowed to plug other shows? I'm sorry. I'll leave now. Love you. Bye.
Love you. Bye, Bandit.
Hang up button. Okay. Bye-bye.
Yes. Thanks for calling. I can't back you up on Cloverfield Paradox, Bandit, because, spoiler alert, I haven't seen that movie, but you're right about Red Hot Chili Peppers, and you're also right that Spencer's a hater.
I'll give you 2 out of 3.
That you're a hater?
Yes, but the Chili Peppers are objectively bad.
Nope.
They're fine, like, until you hear other things, you know? Like, if you haven't heard better stuff yet, they probably sound pretty cool, but then at some point, like, you should get around to trying other things that are better.
All right. I'm gonna...
Like, if the first beer you have is like when everybody goes through that stage where they think Blue Moon is like a nice beer.
That's true.
You're just in that stage of your music listening development, and that's okay.
But see, here's the thing, though, is like there's still a place for Blue Moon.
I'm gonna have to disagree again.
Okay, but that's to play the metaphor out. Sometimes there's still a place for a Blue
When's
Moon.
the last time you've ordered a Blue Moon?
It's been forever.
Yeah, exactly.
But
when's the last time you've listened to Red Hot Chili Peppers?
Not that long ago.
Well,
sincerely, not that long ago.
That's where you goofed, I guess.
All right. I'm going on to our Twitter account right now, and I'm posting a poll that just says, are the Red Hot Chili Peppers objectively bad? Yes and no.
Can we take it a step farther? Because farther is literal distance. Further is metaphorical distance.
Wow. I would have... my English major would have failed me miserably if you asked me to explain the difference between those two.
Well...
Nice job, Spencer!
Now you know. I may not have learned much in art school, but I picked up a few other things along the way.
Proud of you.
In my liberal arts education. I've been listening to a shitload of Paramore lately. So can you make the poll Paramore or Red Hot Chili Peppers?
No.
Okay, cool.
Because that's not the question is, do people agree with your statement that the Red Hot Chili Peppers are objectively bad? And that's what we need to find the answer to.
Well, okay, let's be careful about our phrasing, though. Let's try and give it a sign.
Maybe you should have been more careful about your phrasing when you made the sentence. That's what you said.
Yeah. But I'm saying we should pose the question in a more neutral way than posing the negative.
Well, let's just make it a true or false question. The Red Hot Chili Peppers are objectively bad. True or false?
Or the Red Hot Chili Peppers are : and then have the options be good or bad.
Okay, yeah. I'm fine with that. I can do that.
We don't want to bias it in the people either, because I feel like we're setting people up to disagree with me here because it's fun to disagree with the guy with a hot take.
I like how that's your reasoning. It couldn't possibly be that it's a bad take.
We'll find out. It may. Even if people disagree with me, it's not a bad take.
You know what I think we also need to do? I'm sorry, guys. We just need to get through this, and we'll be moving on to weirder and funnier things in a second. I think we need to run it on our Twitter account, and then we need to pose the exact same question on your Twitter feed to your Twitter followers, and I need to do it on my feed to my followers, and we need to see.
I'm gonna block so many people.
You're going to go from 3,500 followers to like 14 in a day. Like, nope.
I'm just not going to see anything. I'm going to log into Twitter and it's just going to say it's empty because I've blocked everyone on Twitter.
Did you see Ice Cube talk about how fun it is to block people on Twitter the other day?
No, but he's right. It is.
He's like, when you learn how to block motherfuckers on Twitter, this place is actually real fun. I like learning from people I've never talked to before.
I was having this conversation with friend of the podcast, Lydia Liza, the other night about how many people we each had blocked on Twitter.
Yeah.
And she has one person blocked on Twitter.
I got to be honest, mine's not that long. It's I don't know. It's not that long. I don't know how many it is, but it's like...
Lydia went on Fox News to talk about feminism and blocked one person on Twitter.
Yeah.
Lydia was getting literal death threats. Like, she does 2 months out of every year on Twitter, and she has blocked one person.
That's real.
Incredible.
That is pretty incredible.
I had 40 something, and I didn't know who most of them were.
She's got significantly more patience than you do.
All right, one more voicemail.
Let's do it.
Hey, it's Scott.
Hi.
I'm going to bed. Just want to call and tell you guys good night. So, good night. Talk to you tomorrow. Bye, boys.
Bro.
Gonna be a good day.
Fucking. This might be the best voicemail we've ever gotten. Dude, it would warm my heart if just once a night somebody called just to tell us good night. Like, what a fucking adorable
This
and like
voicemail made me so happy.
it's so good. Also, he sounds like a little buzzed and like real happy.
He sounds sleepy. He sounds sleepy.
Okay, maybe sleepy.
It's 14 seconds. We can listen again.
Yep.
Hey,
Hi.
it's Scott.
Hi, Scott.
I'm going to bed. Just want to call and tell you guys
I'm going to
night.
bed.
So, good night. Talk to you tomorrow. Bye, boys.
That's so awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the inclusion
Bye,
of "talk to you
boys."
tomorrow" is is
He
very.
didn't call back. He has not called back since.
I think we need the "bye boys" drop so that we can, we can say goodbye, bye boys, or Scott can say bye on our behalf at the end of every episode.
Yes. All right, Ryan. You done with your Twitter poll? Can we talk about silly stuff?
You can start us off while I finish my Twitter poll.
Okay. We're going full blown ancient aliens this week because sometimes you just gotta send it.
Does Giorgio Salukalos make an appearance?
He could. I've started rewatching some.
Spoiler alert. He does.
Some ancient aliens this week.
Did you?
Yeah, because the entire season or entire series, all 14 seasons, is on demand if you have Comcast. And what better to do in the evening than fire off a couple episodes of Ancient Aliens?
I got to be honest with you. I've probably only watched total like 5 or 6 episodes.
It doesn't surprise anyone who's listening right now.
That's probably true.
Can you add that to your Twitter poll? Have you ever been surprised when Ryan says he hasn't seen something?
I like it though because the default is people are like, Ryan probably hasn't seen it. But then when I have seen something, everyone's like, hey, he's seen it. And then there's a celebration on my behalf.
That's just you typing in caps. Come on.
Well, also this.
That doesn't constitute a celebration.
Also this.
We're talking about elongated skulls.
Big head.
Cone heads.
Big head. Cone head.
I watched a good chunk of cone heads today to try and pull some sounders, and it's tough.
I also watched a chunk of cone heads to try to pull some sounders and did not find any good ones either.
Yeah. Lots of weird accents and music and sound effects and shit.
Yeah.
I personally want to talk about the Malta skulls. I don't know which one or ones you prepped.
I'm going to Peru with it.
Okay, great.
So why don't you start us in Malta and I'll take us to Peru afterwards.
Okay. Well, Malta, if you're not familiar, is a small island nation about 50 miles south of Italy with a population of about 500,000 people. And on Malta, there is a place called the Hypogeum of Hal Cephalini. H-A-L.
Yes.
S-A-F.
Yes.
I-L-E-N-I.
Okay.
Hypogeum of Hal Cephalini.
That's a tough one.
Mm-hmm. I think I got it.
That's the worst name I ever heard. I'm helping because I don't have the sounding board.
That's a pretty good Sislak impression, though.
Thank you.
It is, at 5,000 years old, likely the oldest prehistoric underground temple in the world.
That's a pretty lit.
It's a hell of a title.
Where's Indiana Jones at?
It was first discovered in 1902 when construction workers were building out or digging out foundations for some new buildings.
Okay.
And dug through the roof of this underground temple.
Oops.
And yeah, exactly. Originally tried to just cover it back up because they assumed that they had somehow fucked up.
I love the idea of a guy who's just like, nope, the demons are coming out. The demons are coming out. Filled in, filled in, filled in.
Well, he might not have been too far off.
Cool.
They began excavating it a couple years later, and they found this huge underground structure.
Okay.
Consisting of 3 different levels descending into the earth, farther into the earth. They likely had to remove, so it's carved out of existing bedrock. So they didn't like dig a big hole build something in it and then cover it back up, they removed stone that was already there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's estimated that they removed about 2,000 tons of stone during the construction of it.
What?
Mm-hmm.
This is all on Malta.
Yeah.
Damn, Malta's not that big of an island.
Do you have any stats in terms of like square mileage or anything? I don't have that in my notes.
Hey, Spencer, guess what Malta is? It's your favorite word.
Is it an archipelago?
Nailed it!
Sick.
It is an archipelago. It is just off the boot of Italy.
Yeah.
It is a series of 3 islands, it looks like. It is... Let's see.
It's another episode of Ryan Reads Wikipedia. Come on, buddy. You got it.
Google's hard. Population 475,000 people.
Yeah.
And an area of 122 square miles or 316 square
Oh, goddamn.
kilometers for our non-American friends. It's the world's...
that boy big.
It's not. It's the world's 10th smallest and 5th most densely populated country.
Those two are fucking dumb.
Okay.
But that's crazy, though, that they took that much stone out in the process of building this thing. You said 2,000 tons?
It's an estimate, but yeah.
Crazy.
I estimate based on density and negative space, I would guess. It's estimated that it was only used until about 2500 BC. So it hasn't been used in whatever that is, 4,500 years.
Mm-hmm.
And in 1902, it was discovered. And then in 1904, they actually excavated it. And in 1908, it was opened to the public.
Okay. That seems like a dicey thing to open up to the public. Like, here, come into our 3 layers down underground temple that's like
Yes.
100 or not 100, hundreds, thousands of years old.
Hundreds of thousands?
No, hundreds. And then I realized I
Yes.
misspoke and said thousands and thousands of years old.
So, because it was discovered in the way that it was by accident and not by archaeologists,
They found juice boxes in it.
well, some things went missing, we think.
Yeah. That'll happen.
Many of the chambers seem to have been emptied without any documentation of what was in there or where things went.
Mm-hmm.
And in I think it was 06, the first actual study of the hypogeum was done by...
Yes, do it. Do it. I believe.
Themistocles. Themistocles. The mystical Zamet.
Yep.
The last name is definitely Zamet.
Cool.
Curator of the National Museum of Malta.
Oh, okay.
So most of the information we have is based on his assessment from 1906 when things had already been fucked with.
Kind of taken, etc.
Some things had gone missing.
Yep.
But based on what he did find in some of the areas that were untouched, and then extrapolating that to the rest of the temple, he thinks that between 6,000 and 7,000 people were buried there. And it appears to have been some sort of temple to the dead.
Damn, son.
So he found that 6,000 to 7,000 number has been reported in different ways in different places.
Okay.
It's sometimes reported as 6,000 to 7,000 skulls were found, and only a dozen or a couple dozen of them survived. I think what's probably more accurate is he only found a dozen or a couple dozen, and estimated based on other fragments and other areas of the temple
that there must have been many more there?
That there probably were many more people actually buried there. But he actually got intact skulls of only, I think it's like 12 to 15.
Okay. Yeah, and that's going to be so hard to estimate at that point because if you know it's been fucked with and broken into and robbed and potentially scattered,
also
how can you know?
Yeah, and you're looking at things that are thousands of years old.
Right.
And luckily, because this thing was underground and sealed, it was fairly well preserved. You know, these weren't exposed to the elements, and it was sort of the climate was fairly stable because it was underground. But you're still dealing with bones that are 5,000 plus years old.
Yeah, it's gonna deteriorate.
Some of those skulls are odd looking and elongated, and specifically elongated in a sort of a conical way. So the back plate of the skull looks like it's just been stretched straight out and back, sort of at like a 45-degree angle, as opposed to some other forms of elongation or deformation that we might talk about later.
We will. Oh, we will.
A couple of them, or at least one of them, also displays what some of the Peruvian ones we'll be talking about later display, which is an absence of the cranial knitting lines or sutures. So when a baby human is born, there are different pieces of your skull that fuse together over time. It has to be somewhat malleable so you can get out of your ma, and then over time it sort of firms up. And there are these little lines where the different pieces of your skull fuse together.
Yes.
I think it's the sagittal. Is that the one down the middle?
No.
I think so. The one down the middle, some or at least one of these skulls is missing.
Yep. So
it's maybe a little bit weirder than just them being big or elongated. There also is evidence of drilling and swelling at the back of the skull. So some of these skulls look like there was some sort of swelling that was then drilled into to relieve said swelling.
Ouchie, ouch, ouch, ouch.
I don't know what the cause of that would be or what medicine in 2500 BC looked like. Or if that had anything to do with why these people died and were buried.
It's that whole you got some ghosts in your blood, you should do some cocaine about it thing where it's like, yeah, we don't fucking know. We'll put a leech up your nose and drill a hole in your head and that'll help your headache.
These odd skulls were displayed publicly until 1985, but now are only available to researchers upon request. And I don't know if that's an issue of deterioration over time.
Right.
Or there are lots of weird conspiracies, of course, around that.
Right.
In other places, it's reported that they disappeared in 1985, but
the government got them.
People have been given access.
They're under the Vatican
to study and even photograph them since then. They're just not publicly displayed anywhere.
Got it.
You can, however, still visit the hypogeum itself.
That's cool.
And do a walking tour through most of it.
Damn.
They closed it for a couple of years they had to update a few things in terms of mostly they had to put in a new HVAC system essentially because it had been sealed for thousands of years and now people were moving through there and they needed to make sure that people were safe and getting airflow
oxygen
and whatnot. And also to try and preserve what was down there.
Oh, sure.
Because even people just walking through and exhaling changes the climate enough to possibly accelerate the deterioration of some things.
Sure. Moisture and
it's impossible to have people moving through all day, every day without some people touching things and creating, just introducing lots of new shit that didn't used to be there.
Mommy, look, a bone.
Well,
put it back, honey, put it back.
But like even some of the, I think it's limestone that it's carved out of, even just oils from people's hands. Like if you run your hand along the wall or put your hand on, the edge of something as you're coming around a corner, that can start to actually flake off and wear away the limestone or like the top layer of it. So they were sealing some of the like busier parts and then introducing new airflow.
Yeah.
But it's open and you can walk through it.
That's cool.
The temple itself, so we got weird skulls. We have thousands of people buried underground in this huge 3-layer temple. The temple itself is pretty fucking cool in that there is a chamber sort of in the middle that has some really weird resonant properties.
Ooh, cool.
And appears to be designed intentionally to resonate at certain frequencies and to not necessarily amplify, but distribute sound throughout other chambers of the temple. So if you stand in the middle of this one chamber and speak, it can be heard throughout the entire temple.
Damn, that's freaky.
And Dr. Ian Cook, professor from UCLA, studies prehistoric megalithic structures and specifically their resonant properties because he believes that there are other locations around the world intentionally designed to resonate at certain frequencies for certain ritualistic purposes.
Do you think they had like CB radios back then and it was just they had to stand in the right designed space? Well,
his opinion is that it's not so much for communication, but for ritual. And he found that basically he went into this chamber and just blasted
Slayer
different frequencies into the room to try and determine if it had a specific resonant frequency.
Sure.
And found that it had resonant. It was resonant between 110 to 112 hertz. And he's found that most of the megalithic structures that he's studied that have some sort of resonant properties resonate between 95 and 120 hertz. So that's fairly low, but it's like sort of the low end of the human voice would be somewhere in those frequencies. Well, that's basically what he's getting at is he thinks that this chamber and others like it may have been where special spiritual and or social events occurred, and they were designed to amplify and reverberate chanting, specifically male chanting. So if you had a group of men in there chanting, there's a reverb tail around 110 hertz that lasts 8 seconds.
Whoa, so that's legit.
Yeah, there would be some pretty serious buildups. And he also had people listen to different frequencies in this range and monitor their brain activity to see if there's something unique about 110 to 112 hertz and why so many of these places seem to be designed with that frequency range in mind.
Yeah.
And in a study with 30 healthy adults, he had them listen to tones at 90, 100, 110, 120, and 130 hertz and measured their brain activity. And at 110 hertz, found that left temporal brain activity was significantly lower than at any of the other frequencies. And the pattern of activity over the prefrontal cortex shifted from one of higher activity on the left to at all other frequencies to one of right dominance at 110.
What's this guy's name again?
It's Ian Cook. He's a professor of psychiatry and behavioral science at UCLA. Biobehavioral science, sorry. And
that's a far more legit title than I was inventing in my head.
What did you invent it?
I'm just like...
Dude with a microphone and a notebook.
Well, not to be...
And an oscilloscope.
Not to be whatever, but like...
29 friends.
Yeah. Not to be whatever, but I think most of these... I don't know. A lot of the stuff around the elongated skulls stuff screams pseudoscience.
Yeah.
And so when you were telling me
Spoiler, that's what we talk about here.
No, I know. But when you told me that this guy was doing sonic treatments to people's minds and was getting an effect out of it, I was immediately hella skeptical and was like, oh, is he Dave, the audio enthusiast from England who showed up with his 30 friends? And
there are those people also.
There are.
They have cool websites that I also spent time on.
Yes.
But chose not to lead with.
But this guy's work and title off the rip feels much more legitimate to me than I would have expected, is I guess what I'm trying to say.
To simplify and maybe oversimplify, but I'm not really smart enough to know those findings, that brain activity shift represents a relative deactivation of language centers in the brain and an increase in activity in areas of the brain responsible for emotional processing.
Huh.
So
I hope you're about to tell me that you have a bunch of 110 hertz sounds queued up and we're going to listen to them live on the show and see what our brains do.
I could play 110 sine wave for you if you really want.
I kind of do.
Okay.
Keep telling me your story, though. We can play it at the end.
I'm about at the end. This is a direct quote from the abstract of his findings. These intriguing findings suggest that the acoustic properties of ancient structures may influence human brain function and suggest that a wider study of these interactions should be undertaken.
Interesting.
So he thinks that this structure and others like it may have been intentionally built to affect brain activity and maybe with some other influences create altered states in one's brain.
Well, and something that isn't covered there that I think is very fascinating, and obviously I don't think there would be a good way to test this per se, but what effect does 110 hertz frequencies chanted with high degrees of reverberation, what effect does that have on the human brain when your brain is a different shape and your skull is a different shape?
Maybe they were elongating their skulls to resonate at 110.
I'm saying, like, what if that is part of it is, hey, we made this room and when you fucking elongate your skull, it emphasizes, I mean, you have...
Also, here's some free mushrooms. Also, you have to chant, so work on your breathing techniques.
All of the above.
Yeah.
But really though, right? I mean, if we're talking about a thing that would affect the head and the brain and the hearing, would not having your skull in a different shape with... I'm trying to think. I guess it wouldn't be more surface area in total, but you would have more surface area for depending on where the sound was hitting your head.
You got a big old reverb tank for a dome, bud.
Yeah, you got a big reverb tank.
You want to hear 110 hertz still?
Sure, let's hear it.
Okay.
We're going to transcend. Whoa.
It's down there, but not way down there. Ooh, the first
like a pretty good ohm.
The first suggestion on YouTube is 110 frequency, 1 hour ancient out of body. Guys, today's podcast is going to be 1 hour longer than normal.
All right, guys, we'll see you on the other side. Let us know if you have an out of body experience. We will too.
Hell yeah.
Damn, it's pretty intense.
Well, yeah, I'll turn it down a little bit.
No, I just mean in general, whatever volume you had that at, I feel like if you listen to that for a full hour, that would be pretty intense.
Yeah.
Be a lot.
You want to try?
Not really.
Okay, cool.
I hope we save about 4 seconds of 110 hertz and we just interrupt each other with it on the soundboard. Boop.
Look,
boop,
I'll put it at the end of the episode. Today's episode is going to be an hour longer than normal, but it'll all be at the end.
And it's an hour of 110 hertz at the backside.
This week's Patreon episode is just 110 hertz for an hour.
You're welcome for your out of body experiences.
Dude, YouTube suggestions are lit in this corner. 417 hertz healing music. Let go of mental blockages. Remove negative energy. Ancient frequency music.
You know what the crazy part is?
8 million views. God damn it, we should be making money off of bullshit like this.
I was literally just saying, I bet you it has so many views.
This is okay. There was a chord change. The other one was literally one tone.
A single tone.
That only had 392,000 views though.
But still, that's so many views.
First comment: ancient astronaut theorists say yes.
God bless. The YouTube comments are either an absolute trash fire or they're one of the most
extremely
golden,
on point.
Yeah, just golden bits you've ever heard.
So I thought that was interesting in maybe not in direct relationship to the skulls, but more in like there seemed to be some pretty weird shit going on down here. And also these people seem to have some things figured out pretty early on.
Yeah, totally.
The ability to, or the knowledge that 110 hertz maybe does some weird shit to your brain.
Right.
But then also the engineering ability to actually build something to resonate at a specific frequency.
Right.
Sort of impressive. And
hell yeah.
they must have had some level of commitment to like, no, this is real and it's important.
And we're going to excavate 2,000 tons worth of stone.
I mean, I don't think that was the only purpose for the temple, but yeah.
I'm just saying, like, if you're also going to be...
They also had, death cults.
Excuse me?
The Malta death cults.
That's a real thing?
We don't have time today, but give it a Google.
Yikes. Stripes. That's a lot.
Uh-huh. So the skulls themselves, I mean, I guess we can get into at the end what we think is going on with these skulls and if it's artificial head binding and whatnot.
Well, I'm going to dive straight into artificial cranial deformation.
Yeah, okay.
Before we talk about Peru.
The one other thing I had about Malta was they seem to have some weird thing about their priests and snakes.
Uh-oh.
Possibly snake priests.
Uh-oh.
They seem to like snakes, and they had a lot of priests.
If you've got an extra 9 to 10 inches on top of your head, you know what a really good place to keep a snake is?
Wrapped around it?
Wrapped around your big dumb skull. You can hide under my hat now, bud.
A quick quote from Vittorio de Cesar and Adriano Forgione, who were some of the more recent people allowed to view, study, and photograph the skulls.
Strong names.
Said, quote, "Perhaps the skulls found in the hypogeum and examined during our visit to Malta belonged indeed to these serpent priests.
Oh.
The long head and drawn features must have given a serpent-like appearance, stretching the eyes and skin.
Spooky.
We can only speculate, but the hypothesis can't be far from reality."
Okay. I'm pretty sure that's not how that works.
Solid logic.
We can't know for sure, but we're pretty sure we know.
A reality worsened by the fact, by spelled B-U-Y, by the fact that such deformities certainly created walking problems, forcing them, ... to slither! Exclamation point.
Oh, God. Get serious.
So he thinks they
Is that a joke? That's got to be a joke, right?
It's on the internet. It must be real.
Sounds...
All right, your turn to talk about Peru.
Well, I'm not going to go right into...
Snake people. We solved it.
We're done here. I'm going to talk a little bit more specifically about artificial cranial deformation before we get into Peru specifically.
Okay.
So you talked a little bit about it as it relates to Malta. Hell yeah. But what the fuck is artificial cranial deformation to start? So
artificially deforming your cranium.
You're right.
Am I close?
You started off on a good foot. So it's actually a practice that is older than written history. People have been doing this for longer than we were writing down the things that we were doing, which is crazy, and I did not know. They've also been doing it. Are you
saying that we didn't have the ability to write until we started deforming our cranium?
No. I'm not saying that. Although, and if
is it possible?
Is it possible? And if so, no. But it's something that's been happening for a really long time, and the practice itself is essentially people take the heads of their children and apply force to them using
rude.
A variety of methods.
Should not apply force to your child's head.
I agree.
Just in general, don't do it.
As an infant, your head, like you said, you got to be able to have a relatively malleable head when you come out of your mama's pelvis, because your mom's pelvis is a confined area and your brain might be slightly bigger than that, or your head might be slightly bigger than that, so it's got to be able to move. So what they do is they use that malleability
use it against the child
to
make them weird looking.
From roughly 1 month after they're born to 6 months to a year or so, they can continue to shape and reshape the skull, and then at that point, those sutures that you're talking about, they actually heal and seal together, creating
or they disappear if you're a snake priest.
They seal and heal, and then your brain continues to grow with that same bone structure in that same way for the rest of your life. They do it in a bunch of different ways, and by they, I mean this is really a historical thing. It's not something that's really done today. I think there are some very remote, lingering practices, but for the most part, obviously, this is not practiced in the way that it was traditionally. You can round a head by binding it in cloth.
Round it?
Like putting a band in it almost. Does that make sense? Like
a really tight headband?
Like a really tight headband, and then you get almost like an indent in a more of a bulbous sort of shape out of the back of it.
Okay.
Other societies have been known to. This sounds super fucked up. I got the ickies like multiple times when I was doing research on this because there's some illustrations and it doesn't take much, but this was enough for me to be like, ugh. They put a kid on a board with a hinge at the top of it with another board, and then they just use straps to push the front of the kid's head down.
Move, you dumb kid.
Like a
roll over.
I don't know, like a mouse trap or something like that, just like applying pressure to the forehead of the kid, and that creates sort of a flat and
hell no,
more of a wedge shape face/head. And then there's also the conical ones, which is sort of a combination of the two. Sometimes it's boards around the side of the head that are sort of bound together to get it to grow into that sort of
that one seems like it'd be trickier
board shape. I agree.
Do you ever listen to or watch the Point by Harry Nilsson?
Is this about pointed heads?
Yeah, everybody's got one.
Is this true?
Well, in that story, it is.
By who?
Except one guy, Oblio. He doesn't have one.
Is this?
Harry Nilsson, The Point.
Isn't Harry Nilsson a singer?
Has Ryan seen it? Yeah, he made a record that's like half music and half story. So he'll sing a song about whatever's happening and then narrate, and then sing a song about it and then narrate.
No way.
And they made it's one of my favorite albums ever. Then there was an animated version in like the 70s.
This sounds like a complete trip. I really like Harry Nilsson. What's his most famous song?
I probably got enough weed for us to watch it later.
All right.
I mean, drugs are bad.
Don't do that, kids. We have found these everywhere, which is pretty crazy. I'm going to go through
everywhere.
Not everywhere, but a lot of places. 8300 to 8600, the East Germanic tribes, so like the Huns. We found them in current day Iraq.
8600?
AD.
Got it.
300 to AD 600.
Got it. I was like, finding future skulls?
Right.
Which internet are you on?
Southwestern Asia, we found them. We found them in the areas where the Mayans and the Incas were. Native Americans in the United States. We have evidence of these elongated skulls. Aboriginal Australians in Africa.
The aliens got around.
Tahiti, Samoa, Hawaii.
So you're saying every culture had contact with the extraterrestrials.
Toulouse in France. So, I mean, we can get there now or later, but there is...
You were going to tell us about Peru still.
I'm just going to say there's an interesting question to be asked, which is, before intercontinental travel was a thing that we have any evidence or documentation of, this was a form of body deformation and modification that existed in almost every continent in many cultures over a wide spread of time and a wide spread of places. And I do find that really interesting.
Yeah, that's always odd. Whether it's architecture or cultural practices, I mean, how did we all come to the same conclusion about a very specific thing that, in this case, I don't think has any real advantages, right?
Well, So that's a really good segue into the next thing I was going to say, which is why are we doing this?
Yeah.
And obviously we don't know, we don't have any written documentation of specifically why this was done. Or what we do have is extremely, limited, and it's also not applicable to every single culture and every single culture's reasoning for doing what they were doing.
If we do have information, it's coming from Brien Foerster's Facebook page,
which we're going to talk about.
Do we have to?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's roughly. We do. There's this great report that I saw referenced from Marta Alfonso Durruti, who's an anthropologist from Kansas State University, and they wrote a paper that was published in the American Journal of Physical Anthropology. And the paper examined 60 skulls from a group of, from what we could gather, hunter-gatherers that lived in the southern Patagonia area from around 2,000 years ago. And 30% of the 60 skulls showed some version of intentional deformation of the skull.
So, wait, 19 of them, probably? You said 30% of 60?
Yeah.
Okay.
So 18, 19 of them. And what they were hypothesizing in this paper is that hunter-gatherers had to travel, but they were probably at a time in history where not everyone was traveling in the way that hunter-gatherers were traveling.
Okay.
And so
How were they traveling?
What do you mean?
How you said not everyone was traveling in the way that they were traveling. How were they traveling?
I'm saying some people in the tribe's job was to be a hunter and a gatherer, and some people were staying put.
You're saying not everyone was traveling as much as they were.
Yes.
Got it.
Yes. There were some people who were staying put while the hunters and gatherers of the tribes would go out.
Understood.
And from what I could gather from the paper, the hypothesis they were putting forth was this was essentially a way of going, I'm one of you. So let's say you've got a big tribe with tons of people in it.
They hadn't figured out handshakes yet.
Right? Something like that.
They didn't have gang signs back then.
Yeah, no gang signs.
They didn't have tattoos.
You can't wear a blue or a red jersey to tell people what your squad is, or a blue or a red jersey. That's something you could swap, and somebody you could have killed a hunter gatherer and taken his red jersey and then walked in and been like, yeah, I'm one of you from another place. But this,
you think they felt stupid when they met people from other places that just had tattoos?
And they were like, oh, that would have been so much easier.
Their heads are so normal looking.
But also, so going back to the why, and that's also a perfect segue as well, there are other people who have said it's not just a you're one of me, I'm one of you cultural community, we're on the same team thing. There's also an element of it that was beauty. They have done reconstructions of King Tut's head and found that King Tut's head is flattened along the top and slightly elongated.
Didn't he have a lot of issues though?
Well, there's hypotheses of that as well. But also, if you look at a lot of the Egyptian culture, a lot of the depictions of those heads have wraps or pushbacks that go up.
Yeah, the flattening was an Egyptian thing too, I think.
Yeah.
I understand, we've always done all kinds of weird things in the name of beauty.
Yep.
It just seems odd to not all, but for so many separate cultures who, as far as we know, weren't really interacting with each other or had very limited interactions with each other, to all settle on the same pretty drastic version of it, of beauty.
Yeah.
Of body modification.
Well, and it's not just beauty. So again, great segue. There's one additional element of this that is not entirely universal, but sort of we've seen in a lot of places, which is that, this is a thing that is often done to people who are of a higher class, whether that be wealth or royalty or both, that those often are the people who have the strongest or most modification. One of the ways that we've seen that was through measuring carbon and nitrogen isotopes of the bones from some of these skulls. And in one specific location, it's called the Colca Valley, which is in southeastern Peru. They found skulls from 1100 to 1450 CE that had the bones, after being tested, had evidence of having consumed a more varied diet. And that is evidence often that the people who had those bones were more privileged because a less varied diet meant that you were poor and you could only afford a couple ingredients. So this
was status potentially as well.
Status. So status, beauty, again, or a combination of the two.
Again, within a culture or a few cultures, I get that. It still seems odd that, because there's so many ways to display status or beauty and so many interpretations of both.
And also a thing that I found, or I still think is strange, is there's a lot of ways you could modify a body. Not just like, obviously you said, the skull being a incredibly drastic one, but I don't know, we didn't weight our arms to make them longer, or there are other things that you could do to modify a body that would signify difference from your culture. Like, why don't we run across a lot of those? Like, oh, this culture weighted their arms so that the longer your arms were, the more. Do you know what I'm trying to get at? That's a shitty example, but
my guess is that we do. They're just not as drastic and not as widespread.
Well, and I guess that's what I'm getting at, though, is why that one so specifically and why so widespread.
Is it possible that we just don't have lasting records of other body modification things because you can't modify people's bones?
I mean,
if I stretch out my earlobes, you're never going to know, because if you find me 5,000 years later, my earlobes are long gone.
And yes, that's true. I guess I just wonder, I don't know. Aren't children's bones in general pretty flexible? Couldn't you be curving bones, or I don't know?
I don't know, but I also can't think of another example that wouldn't have
demonstrably negative effects.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you give birth to a baby and then you're spending all day, every day with that baby, you're probably going to realize that their heads are soft.
Well, from everything,
right? That's going to become apparent to anyone who gives birth to a baby.
And from everything I know about giving birth to babies, which is not very much at all. No, it's just that often a baby's head naturally elongates a little bit on its way out to fit through the pelvic canal when it comes out.
That's what I'm saying. Is it just because it'd be pretty hard not to be aware of the fact that their sutures are not fused?
Right.
And it maybe wouldn't have an immediate or a demonstrable negative effect on their ability to exist.
Right.
And we have permanent better documentation of it because it's bone related as opposed to most other body modifications.
Yeah. I think all those things are definitely possible, if not probable. It still feels surprisingly universal.
Yeah. I guess part of what I'm positing is, are there other equally universal body modifications that we just don't have as good of a record of and aren't in this particular pseudoscientific zeitgeist in the same way because they don't look like aliens?
I think yes, probably. I still find, I guess, any version of universal body modification pre a time where we were sharing information and being physically in each other's spaces cross-continent as sort of word? Really? We were building columns the same, or building pyramids the same, or shaping our heads the same without even seeing each other or knowing that we were doing it? Why? How are we that instinctually similar from across such distances as to be executing the same exact modifications, same exact structure building, same, to your point, same exact piercing or tattooing or whatever it might be?
This one is less weird to me than some of the architectural stuff, for instance, because we all have the same hardware, right? Like it's not that weird that we would try stuff out with our bodies and we all have essentially the same bodies.
Yeah. Yeah. I get
Building
that.
techniques being used across continents and across oceans is a little bit more intriguing to me because there's specific information, there are materials, there's, techniques and all kinds of, there are more variables than like, yeah, literally all of us have a skull.
Right.
Let's maybe push it around and see what happens.
Right. I want to talk about Peru for just like a few minutes here, and then I got a couple of questions or things to wrap it up / kind of a fun way of thinking about this whole thing.
We have some early returns on the Twitter poll too.
Uh-oh. Mm-hmm. What do we got? You went out of losing.
So far, let's see. We have 69% good, 31% bad.
Nice.
We have a few responses.
Uh-oh.
Horrible. 31% are wrong, meaning they're good. I would like a quote, mostly good, I like a few songs, unquote option.
No, that is the exact point of a binary poll.
And do Sublime next, which hell yeah, we're gonna do Sublime next.
We gotta wait till this one finishes though. I set it for 36 hours, so we gotta wait for 36 hours until
Why
we do
36?
Sublime. Because this episode is not out yet, so people need to be able to show up and weigh in.
You're right.
All
Look,
right.
if 70% of you guys think Sublime is a good band, the podcast is over. Just by the way, we're starting over.
No, you're corrupting the poll.
I'm blocking everyone who votes good on the Sublime poll.
I'm gonna
forever. You'll never see another one of our fun, goofy tweets or polls.
And when Spencer
And once I figure out how to block people from a podcast, you're fucking out of here.
When Spencer leaves, I'm gonna rename it the What If Sublime Cast, and it's gonna be a fan cast where we just talk about Sublime lyrics.
Cool.
It's gonna be you and me, guys.
Have fun podcasting to yourself.
All right, so let's go to Peru.
Okay.
In Peru in the 1920s, 1928 to be specific, there was a Peruvian archaeologist whose name was Julio Teo, and he was doing a dig in the Pisco province, which is on the south coast of Peru, like southwest coast of Peru. And in the course of that dig, Julio found 300 elongated skulls in a graveyard on the Paracas Peninsula, which is inside of the Pisco province.
Good job.
Yeah. They were able to suss out that the Paracas culture was in the area from about 800 to 100 BCE. They were able to find out that they built irrigation systems, that they had elaborate textiles, and that also they buried their dead in shaft tombs that they reused over periods of time.
Shaft tombs?
I know, pretty crazy, right?
What does that mean? You just dig a shaft and into the ground?
I think it means it's like a long tube and you kind of put a couple people and then you put a couple people and you put a couple people on your way out.
I am not following this at all.
As in, you go down or in. I think in might be more accurate, like into a mountain, into some sort of wall, and then you just dig a shaft like a railroad tube.
You just push them in?
And you stop at, 300 feet in.
Are you sure about this? Or are you just guessing?
I have no idea. I'm guessing what a shaft tomb is. And you roll a rock in front of it, and every time you need to add a couple more, you roll the rock aside, you walk 295 feet down the tomb this time, drop one, and go back.
If you're just making shit up, stop talking like you know what you're talking about.
I'm just saying, that sounds like what it would be.
It's like the most white male shit you've ever done on this podcast.
I don't think that's true at all. We've done,
I have no idea, but I'm going to present this as if I know a lot.
We've done far worse. No, I told you I was hypothesizing that I had no idea what I was saying while I was envisioning what a shaft tomb might look like.
You got about 15 seconds.
For what?
Till the show's over,
Shut your ass up. We got time. All right. So, 300 skulls. That's a lot of elongated skulls. They are interesting in similar ways to the Malta skulls. So, missing a central suture. some of them. Well, let me rewind. A specific individual who we referenced earlier, Brien Foerster, took a specific interest in these elongated skulls.
Sure did.
I'm not able to find any scientific qualifications for Brien.
I don't think he has them.
I don't necessarily think he does either. I don't necessarily think he claims to either, for what it's worth. He is a, I don't know, aficionado, I guess. He's interested in the topic, if you will. He went to Peru to examine these skulls and has become connected to this entire research project. He is now the director of the museum in Peru that houses these skulls. That museum...
Is museum the right word?
It is a privately owned showcase of these skulls.
Okay.
They call it a museum, but it is privately owned by whoever owned the land when these were dug up. And he curates it, if you will, and speaks around the country, and I'm sure drives a ton of visitors to the area for this purpose. But but Foerster identified a handful of things, which, I mean, you can look at them and they're real. You can look at them and they do exhibit some of these characteristics. So like we said, they don't have the same suture plate. They only have one parietal plate. Those are the names of the plates that connect along the sutures. They have one parietal plate that goes up the front, top, back of the head. Some of them are 25 to 30% larger in volume and some 60% larger in weight than the normal human skull.
That part, if true, is interesting to me. Because how are you creating more volume within your skull cavity by essentially elongating it?
Well,
because you can't stretch the actual bones, right? Aren't you just reforming the same amount of material into a different shape?
I think yes.
So how do you get more volume?
I think that's part of his
more weight
question. The only thing I could think of was, you know how when you break a bone, essentially what happens is bone sort of grows in between the bone to connect the bone together?
Your body deposits calcium to the area?
Yeah, and then it sort of, I mean, is it possible that through the shaping, if you're elongating some of those sutures, are you widening the space between the plates and then more calcium needs to fill in the suture to get it to shut? And is that then potentially like spreading the bones, which then if more calcium fills in is actually creating higher volume?
I guess we'd need to know too, like what the actual range amongst humans is. Like what's the normal range?
Yeah.
And is he saying 25% more volume than normal? Or than the high end of that range?
Right.
Or than...
Because if it's just more than average, there are people in the world who have larger heads than the average head.
Yeah, I guess
could be normal-ish.
I don't know what the range is, and I don't know how far outside of that range these are.
Right.
But it does seem like probably not something that... I don't see how you could add more weight or volume by artificial deformation of the cranium.
Yeah, the only thing I could think of, like I said, was the not breakage, but the
60% seems like way too much, though, even for something like that.
No, I agree. That's a lot.
Yeah,
but if you look at some of them, I mean, when you look at some of them, if not many of them, the Paracas skulls are often recognized as the most extreme versions of this cranial deformation that exist of all of the ones we've found. And like I said, we found them in a lot of places. And I think that's part
Ryan,
of...
We've been hunting skulls all over the world. We've found thousands.
The proverbial we. But I think that's part of what makes them so interesting. And if you look at some of them, the actual growth or deformation or top part of the skull, whatever you want to call it, is almost an equivalent of the other half of the forehead down.
They got a double dome.
Kind of. Like it looks like if you were to have another skull on top of your skull without eyes or nose or ears or a mouth.
A double dome.
A double dome.
Mm-hmm.
Put it on the list. The double dome. But yes, Brien agrees with you. His claim is that you can reshape, but you can't grow a skull, and that makes these weird.
That seems reasonable.
They have
not a thing I thought I'd be saying in response to Brian Foerster today.
He also made mention of the fact that many of the skulls have 2 holes in the back of them. They're very small.
As in artificial or just holes?
I don't know if they're necessarily sure whether they're artificial or not. What he compared them to in one of the presentations of his that I watched was we have holes on either side of our jaw that allow blood flow to pass in and out of that area, as well as nerve tissue to pass in and out of that area.
Okay.
He equated them to the same size and shape and canal-like properties of those.
And they're where?
There are 2 of them. They look like, they can't be wider than a pencil eraser. They're probably about half the width of a pencil eraser. And there are 2 of them about 2 to 4 inches apart on the back of the elongated skulls.
Like parallel or perpendicular to the spine?
Perpendicular.
Like through the bottom? Okay, so through the back of the skull, not the bottom.
Yes.
Got it.
Yep. And I think the suggestion potentially there is, did these skulls have nervous system canals and blood canals in their heads or on their heads that are different than the average humans?
Got a big brain, need more blood.
Maybe.
Run some extra pipes up to the double dome.
The last thing that he said
got a 2-story
is about
got to reroute the plumbing.
Double decker. Is that many of the skulls were discovered with reddish hair, which they said was tested.
Dang, that's just science.
And claimed to have not been dyed, and said that because the native peoples of Peru all traditionally have black hair, that this was strange, and that there's potentially Scottish DNA in these people, with the insinuation that there had been cross-continental travel further in the past than we understood, I believe is the insinuation.
Got red hair, they're aliens.
Let's see, it's easy.
Scots are aliens.
Now, the other thing that Brien...
How is hair preserved? You said these are how old?
I can't remember. 800
you said
to
something BC.
800 to 100
we're
BC.
Pulling hair off of them?
I guess.
And it's the original color still?
I don't know. I don't know. I'm certainly not defending anything Brian's saying here.
That's surprising.
An additional piece of his case that dude, some of the skulls look like they have wigs on them. It's not great.
Trash.
It's
so trash.
If you look at the some of the museum pictures, it looks like...
Are we sure they're not wigs?
Absolutely not.
Are we sure that these people didn't shave their heads and wear cool wigs?
Absolutely not. We are not sure of that at all.
The Scots showed up and they killed them and made wigs out of their hair.
Ooh, bummer.
Or they were concerned about how weirdly big their heads were, and they wanted to cover it up.
Well, if they did it on purpose, they wouldn't... Oh, you're saying maybe they happened organically and they're like, quick, put something on?
Yeah.
Should have got some top hats so they didn't have to kill so many Scotsmen. That'd be an easy way to hide it.
Well, 2 birds, 1 stone. You know what I mean? No more Scots. Got a cool hat. Sorry, Scots.
Oh, jeez.
Your country and your people are quite lovely.
We love you. Now, Foerster got into trouble for saying that the DNA might have been from something else.
Interdimensional Bigfoot.
He said that they sent 5 samples to a genetic testing laboratory, and there were mutations in the samples of the Paracas skulls that suggest that researchers were dealing with a completely new human-like being, very different from Homo sapiens, Neanderthals, or Denisovans.
Interdimensional Bigfoot.
Now, he has sort of walked that back since his original post, which he put on Facebook, and was never able to verify the individual or the genetic laboratory where he found those results. So it sounds a lot like bullshit.
Sounds like some ancient alien enthusiasts believe.
Right. Some say.
Did you watch that Facebook video?
What?
Did you watch his Facebook video where he's talking about this stuff?
For Brien Foerster?
Yeah.
No, I've just seen his like presentations and stuff. I didn't watch it.
My favorite part of that video is he's mostly just sitting down and it's a close up of his face. He's talking. But then they cut at one point over to a table where he's got the skull on the table. The two main things in the shot are the skull and a pack of Pall Malls.
Sick.
It's getting equal representation
strong.
in the shot.
That's so strong.
And for that moment, I sort of trusted him.
You're like, this guy gets it.
Mm-hmm.
This guy's a guy.
Yeah.
I think he's sort of walked back his assertion that these are non-human.
Just gonna send it.
And to be honest, I think what he's done more of is a little bit of the I don't know, but also this is kind of weird,
but
right?
Could it be?
He also points to the fact that the Paracas candelabra is one of the more famous Nazca Lines elements, which is obviously it's in Paracas. It's right near this area.
He's building himself some profile points.
We got some profile points, right? You've got, well, why is this happening? Why is this happening? Why are the heads like this? Why would you have...
They're at elevation.
Why would you have lines that are only visible to the sky?
They got boulders in Peru, I think.
Oh, God, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't even say it. Don't even say his name. So I think he's also, what he's doing is he's building up I'm not saying I know what this is. I'm just saying, don't you all think this is pretty weird? And to be fair...
Classic.
I do think it's a little bit weird.
Yeah, sure.
The holes in the back of the head that aren't found on the normal human skull, that's a little weird.
Maybe they're trying to just, because their heads were so big, look in there and see what was going on.
You'd have to have a real tiny eyeball to fit into like a...
early arthroscopic surgery.
Hey,
what's in there? One guy just got sick of wondering one day and decided to have himself a look.
There are... So
maybe it's just water. We can drain it out.
Maybe it's just water. It's just a full balloon.
Pull the plug, bud.
Just...
Hey, man, you don't know unless you take a look.
I mean, I guess. Hey, Dave. Come here quick.
Then you just gotta...
What? No, I just want to check on something. What? What are you gonna do? Can I look in your head?
Jackass, have you seen it?
Yes.
You know, they used to run up behind dudes with the clippers.
Yeah.
People just...
With a drill? Trying to pop your head? It didn't drain.
Oh, he died. Oh, he's dead.
Oops. Just slowly tuck the drill back in your bag. Walk away.
Drains, you just got like a floppy, dilapidated head. It's like slouched over to the other side of your other head.
Just a loose balloon flapping around on top of your head.
Oof. Are we done?
Somebody fill me back up.
Can we be done?
Okay. So here's a question. I want to, I want to end with a couple questions.
Mm-hmm.
And then
I'm ready for your questions.
And then I have the 3 probabilities of what's happening here.
Oh boy. Okay.
I still want to know why specifically it was happening around the world. And I do think you did a pretty good job of, is it a thing that happens naturally when you're born? You add on to that, it's a thing that we're trying. There's a lot of history of body modification. Maybe that is what it is. I find that interesting. But what I find more interesting is why the connection specifically to royalty or important people, because it's not like it's something you couldn't do if you weren't either of those things.
Do we know that was true across cultures, though? Or do we just have...
To a degree, we do. Not universally around the world, but we know to some extent the royal or the wealthy or the elite of cultures were exhibiting these characteristics more frequently.
Okay.
So I find that potentially interesting.
Maybe only the rich people had time to sit around and squish their babies' heads instead of doing other things.
Instead of being poor and needing to work for money.
Yeah, finding food and stuff.
I think the least weird and most probable thing is this is just a natural phenomenon that people notice in their babies, and people started playing with their malleable little heads, and it just happened over time.
And parents just used to get bored, dude.
I love the very improbable but like fun idea of, did historic people see some example that they wanted to be like?
Yeah, dog. Saw the aliens. Those are our gods.
I mean, I know
We're
that
like
that's,
them now.
I know that is like the goofy shit about this, but it's a really fun concept to be like, did the elite and wealthy and royalty around the world all have an experience with people who they were like, those motherfuckers came out of the sky in a silver fucking thing and they're dope and they look dope and we want to be like them. They taught us shit. They gave us wheels and they gave us tools and shit.
So many more styling options if your head is twice as big.
And this is pre-writing, so if that had been the case, we wouldn't know. They're just shaping their heads to look like heads that they saw from people who they thought were pretty cool.
Just spreads through word ahead.
It's like word ahead. Yeah, it's like when, you know, there was like somebody in school who you thought was cool and they got like a branded bag or jersey or shoe or whatever. And you were like,
in the future, people are going to be trying to figure out why our jeans were all so big for a few years. Bless you.
We never sneeze on the show. That's like the second one in the history of the show. Thank you. But I love that concept because makes it for a really fun story.
What if somebody on a podcast in the future is like, Jinkos, only worn amongst royalty, around the world?
Should we start that trend? Should we wear Jinkos and be like, we're rich?
Yes.
Listen to us, we're rich and we got Jinko jeans.
Do they still exist and can they sponsor our show?
There's gotta be Jinko jeans still available, doesn't there?
Ryan, if you're looking up Jinkos right now, instead of asking your second question an hour and 16 minutes into this podcast.
No. I already asked my questions. This is the third possibility and the last possibility and the least probable, which is that...
Swear to God, I will turn this podcast around.
Right. My grandpa used to say, I'll turn this car around and slap us all up. And I love that version of it.
Including himself?
I think that's why it was so funny to me is he would include...
He's going to make you responsible for an old man getting slapped?
By himself.
Yeah.
Look, we're all in this, all right? We're all going to hurt. No, but the most weird and the very least probable is that there is actually some sort of like non-human altered hybrid,
and Brian's got them
species, and they're in this very one specific place, and Brian's got them.
They're on the dining room table next to the Pall Malls. That's the specific place.
I bet if you told that very, very old Peruvian person that one day they'd be on a dining room table in some guy's house next to a pack of Pall Malls.
Not just some guy. Fucking Brien.
Fucking Brien. Not even Dr. Brien, just Brien.
Just a dude.
Anyway, be careful, guys. Don't let your head get drilled while you're not looking. Hey, we love you guys. Thanks so much for supporting the show. If you want an extra episode of the show every single week and access to a back catalog of 100 additional episodes you've never heard before, go to patreon.com/whatifpodcast. It's only $5 a month to get extra podcast. We got new shirts up on the fucking store. Dad Dog's Ghost Blog shirts are up there.
Swag.
At What If Pod on all of our social medias.
I'm making a comeback, 35%.
Oh shit.
Let's go. I'll retweet anybody who votes bad.
Hey, if you haven't shared the show with anybody recently, it's an awesome way to support the show, and it means a ton to us. Share it, retweet it, give it to a buddy, somebody that you think will like it. Leave us an iTunes review. That helps us out a lot too. And I don't have any other announcements.
I think this is such a dang neat show.
Love you. See you next week.